Marcus Kane had everything a man could want. He was young, rich, and handsome in the way magazines like to show on glossy covers. His face had once been called engineered for success by a journalist. His bank account was bigger than small countries. His private jet, a sleek black machine, could cross oceans in silence. People said he had conquered life before turning 30. But Marcus was bored. He sat at the head of a long table in a golden hall, surrounded by the richest men and women of the city. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter bounced off the tall ceilings, and music played softly from a live band. Yet Marcus only swirled the red wine in his glass, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd with the restlessness of a predator that had already eaten. "Nothing excites me anymore," he said suddenly, his voice loud enough to cut through the laughter. The table grew quiet. The elites leaned in, curious. Marcus loved this, when his words pulled all eyes toward him. Money? I have more than I could spend. Cars? Houses? I could buy a country if I wanted. He leaned back in his chair, smirking. Even women, too easy. Too predictable. The men around him chuckled nervously. One of them, a banker with a silver tie, raised an eyebrow. "So, Marcus, what's left for you? You sound like a king looking for a new war." Marcus's grin widened. "A bet." The women at the table exchanged glances. Marcus always had a way of turning dinners into dangerous games. "What kind of bet?" asked another guest. Marcus let the silence build. He enjoyed the suspense, the way their curiosity tightened the air. Finally, he spoke. "I'll marry someone none of you would ever dare to look at twice. Not for beauty, not for power, just to prove I can. Just to prove that in this world nothing is beyond me, not even love itself." Gasps scattered around the table. A woman laughed, covering her mouth with her jeweled hand. "You can't be serious." But Marcus was serious. His pride had been challenged by his own boredom, and now he needed an audience. The very next week, he made good on his words. The church was full, but not with joy. It was full of whispers. People had come not to celebrate, but to witness the spectacle. At the altar stood Marcus Kane, dressed in a black designer suit that cost more than the church itself. His smile was confident, sharp, almost cruel. He looked more like a man signing a business contract than a groom. And then she walked in. Ilara. She was not like the women Marcus usually brought to his parties, tall models, actresses, women sculpted like statues. Ilara was different. She was plus size, her figure soft beneath the simple white dress. Her dark hair fell loosely over her shoulders, and her steps were calm, almost too calm for someone standing before a sea of mocking eyes. The guests leaned forward, whispering louder. Some laughed under their breath. Others shook their heads in disbelief. "He's really doing it," one man muttered. "It's not just a joke." Marcus stood tall, his smirk never fading. To him, this was victory. The moment he showed the world that even marriage was just a game he could win. The vows were spoken, though Marcus said his with the lazy tone of a man reading a script. Ilara's voice, however, was steady, almost serene. She looked at him with eyes that did not flinch, eyes that carried a weight he did not understand. And then came the moment that froze the air. As the candles flickered around the altar, Ilara lifted her gaze. For the briefest second, her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with light. A faint glow, like stars trapped in the depths of her pupils. Marcus blinked. His confident smile faltered for just a moment. Did anyone else see that? He wondered. The priest continued speaking, oblivious. The guests laughed and whispered, their attention still on the strangeness of the marriage itself. No one seemed to notice, except Marcus. When the ceremony ended and the applause rang out, mocking, hollow, insincere, Marcus shook off the thought. Maybe the light caught her eyes, he told himself. Maybe it was nothing. But deep down, a seed of unease settled in him. That night at the wedding banquet, Marcus lifted his glass in triumph. "To the bet," he said. The crowd cheered, though their cheers carried the sharpness of mockery. Ilara, however, did not cheer. She only smiled faintly, watching him with that same calmness, her glowing eyes hidden in the shadows. And somewhere, in the silence between the music and laughter, Marcus felt the first tug of something he could not control. He had married her for a cruel bet. But already something strange had begun, something the whole world would soon see. Marcus Kane had never liked silence. To him, silence was failure. The end of applause, the pause between laughter, the reminder that even power could grow boring. But now, his mansion was full of it. The wedding was over. The headlines had screamed his name for days: billionaire marries in shocking bet, and the photos of Alara in her plain white dress had circled the internet. The world thought it was another of Marcus's games, another cruel joke at the expense of someone else. But in the silence of his glass and steel home, Marcus began to feel something he never expected: unease. Alara walked through the mansion's endless rooms like she had lived there forever. She did not ask for diamonds or clothes. She did not seem impressed by his fortune. At night, while Marcus entertained his friends with champagne and boasts, she disappeared quietly into the gardens. Marcus noticed, one night, after the guests had gone and the laughter had died, he followed her, the gardens stretched wide, lit by glowing lamps and the soft shimmer of the city beyond. Alara stood alone in the center, her white dress brushing the grass. She tilted her face toward the stars, whispering words Marcus could not understand. He stepped closer. Hiding behind a tree, "Alara," he whispered under his breath, testing her name, but she did not hear him. Before his eyes, the air shimmered. A faint blue light spread around her like a veil, and then, impossible, a hologram flickered into existence. It was not a human device. Marcus owned every kind of projection technology, and this was different. Floating above her hands was a map of the stars, not the stars he knew. These were strange, shifting, marked with glowing symbols and paths that curved in ways no human astronomer would draw. Marcus's heart beat faster. His mouth went dry. "Alara," a voice echoed. Not hers, but something speaking through the light. It was deep, layered, like two voices overlapping. She bowed her head slightly. "I am here," the voice rumbled. "The time grows close. You must prepare. The test cannot be delayed," Ilara's calm voice replied. "I understand." Marcus's hands tightened against the tree. A cold sweat ran down his back. "The test? What test?" The hologram flickered again, then vanished into nothing. Alara lowered her hands, her face still lit by the faint glow in her eyes. Then, as if nothing had happened, she turned and walked back toward the house. Marcus stayed frozen in the shadows, his mind racing. The next morning, Marcus confronted her. He had not slept. The image of the star map burned in his head. "What were you doing last night?" he asked sharply, leaning against the kitchen counter, a glass of whiskey in his hand, though the sun had barely risen. Alara stood at the stove, calmly stirring tea. She did not look at him. "I was walking in the garden." "Don't play with me," Marcus snapped. "I saw it. The lights, the voice. Who were you talking to?" Finally, she turned. Her expression was calm, almost too calm. "You should not have followed me." Marcus slammed his glass down. "You think you can come into my house, my life, and hide things from me? Do you know who I am?" Ilara's eyes glimmered faintly. "Yes," she said softly. "I know exactly who you are. A man who thinks the world bends to his will. A man who made a cruel bet to fill the emptiness inside him. And a man who does not yet realize how small he is." Marcus froze. No one spoke to him like that. No one dared. Yet she said it with such calm certainty that he had no reply. She walked past him carrying her tea. At the doorway, she paused and added, "The bet will not matter. What comes next will." Then she was gone. That night, Marcus could not rest. He wandered the mansion, restless, his mind spinning. He thought of her glowing eyes at the altar, the hologram in the garden, the voice that was not human. And then he saw it. Through the tall glass windows of his bedroom, the night sky shifted. A shadow moved across the stars, not a cloud, not a plane, something vast. Marcus rushed to the balcony. His breath caught in his throat. There, high above the earth, hung a ship. It was massive, dwarfing the moon, silent but alive with faint pulses of light across its surface. It did not appear on the news screens in his room. No one else seemed to see it. But Marcus saw, and as he stared, he felt it staring back. His hands shook as he whispered to himself, "What did I marry?" Behind him, the bedroom door opened. Elara stood in the doorway, her face calm, her voice steady. "They are here," she said. Marcus turned slowly, his heart pounding. "Who?" Elara's eyes glowed brighter now, no longer hiding. "The ones who will decide if your world is worth saving." Marcus Kane had always believed the world belonged to him. Every deal, every building, every secret network of power, he thought he could buy or bend them. But now, standing on his balcony beneath the shadow of something impossible, he felt small for the first time in his life. The ship hung above the earth, a silent monster that swallowed the stars. Its surface rippled with faint lights like veins of fire under metal skin. It did not move. It did not speak. It simply watched. Marcus turned to Elara, his voice rough. "What is that?" She stepped closer, her white dress trailing behind her, her glowing eyes fixed on the sky. "It is the beginning." "The beginning of what?" His words cracked. You knew about this, didn't you?" "That thing is yours." "You're not—" He stopped, unable to finish. Elara's voice was calm but heavy. "I am not what you think. I am not the woman from your cruel bet. I am not your trophy to mock or parade. I am here because the test has come." Marcus shook his head, trying to laugh, though the sound was weak. "A test? What are you talking about? They're aliens, aren't they? What do they want? Our land, our technology, our planet." Elara finally turned her gaze on him. For the first time, Marcus saw no softness in her face, only something ancient and cold. "They want nothing of your land. They want nothing of your riches. They want to see your hearts." Marcus frowned. "Hearts? That's ridiculous. What does that even mean?" "They will watch how you act, how you choose, how you treat each other, and if you fail, they will burn this world until there is nothing left but ash." The next morning, the world noticed. Governments scrambled to explain the sudden shadow in the night sky. News stations argued over blurry images. Some said it was a military weapon. Others claimed it was a trick of the atmosphere. But Marcus knew the truth. He stayed glued to his screens, watching leaders panic. The president made a shaky announcement, promising calm. Armies mobilized. Scientists demanded data. But none of their satellites could capture the ship. None of their radars could lock onto it. To them, it was invisible. Yet Marcus saw it clearly every night, hanging above like a silent judge, and Elara never left his side. One night, Marcus couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed her arm as she stood by the window. "Tell me the truth. Why me? Why marry me, of all people? Was I just a cover? A disguise?" Elara's gaze was steady. "I chose you." "Chose me?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "You don't know me. I'm not a hero. I'm not some savior. I'm a man who made a bet. That's all I am." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "That is why I chose you. Because you still have a choice." Marcus froze. Her words unsettled him more than the alien ship. The first sign of the test came in New York. At 2 a.m., the sky above the city lit up with strange patterns of light. Not weapons, not fire. Something else. People poured into the streets, looking up as glowing shapes covered the skyline. And then, in every building, every home, holograms appeared, illusions so real they made hearts stop. The images showed people their deepest fears, their hidden desires. A banker saw his fortune burn before his eyes. A politician saw his lies written across the sky. Families turned against each other, clawing for survival over things that were not real. The city tore itself apart in hours, and then the lights vanished. The world was left in chaos. Marcus watched the news in silence, his fists clenched. "They're not testing humanity, they're torturing us." Elara shook her head. "No, they are showing the truth. What humans do when their masks are stripped away." Marcus turned on her, anger burning in his chest. "And if we fail? If people panic, fight, destroy each other, what then?" Elara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then Earth will burn." Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the night of his wedding. The laughter, the whispers, the cruel joy of proving himself above everyone else. He remembered the way Alara had looked at him, not with anger, not with sadness, but with patience. Now, for the first time, he wondered if she had seen all of this coming. That night, as he lay awake, he asked her one more question. If this test is real, what about you? Who are you, really? Alara stood at the edge of the bed, her figure glowing faintly in the moonlight. I am a messenger. I was sent to live among you, to see if your kind is capable of more than greed. And when the time came, to stand beside the one who could choose differently. Marcus sat up slowly, his chest tightening. And you think that's me? Alara's glowing eyes softened just a little. I hope it is. Far above them, the alien ship pulsed with light. A signal ran through its surface, spreading like ripples on water. Across the globe, other ships appeared, emerging from the darkness like silent giants. The test had only begun, and Marcus Kane, arrogant billionaire, cruel gambler, the man who thought life was a game, was about to face the most important choice in human history. The ships did not move at first. They only hovered above the earth, silent and waiting, as if daring the world to blink first. But then the trials spread. It began in the largest cities. Entire skylines lit up with strange lights, bending reality like heat waves. People looked up and saw things they could not explain. Giant symbols in the sky, shapes that shifted like living constellations, and then the illusions came. In London, people saw rivers of gold pouring through the streets. Men and women fought each other in the chaos, clawing for riches that melted into dust when touched. In Tokyo, towering shadows walked between skyscrapers, forcing the terrified to run. In Cairo, the pyramids glowed with fire, whispering secrets that drove some mad. The aliens were not attacking with weapons. They were showing humanity its own reflection, its greed, its fear, its violence, and humanity was failing. Marcus watched the broadcasts in his mansion, his screens filled with images of collapsing order. Soldiers fired on civilians. Leaders barked speeches, but their voices shook. Neighbors turned against each other for food and water, even though nothing real had been taken away. It's madness, Marcus whispered. They're tearing us apart. Alara stood at the window, her hands folded calmly. No, she said softly. They're revealing who you are when no mask remains. Marcus slammed his fist against the table. Then we're doomed. Humanity's a mess. We're selfish, we're cruel. We'll never pass this game of theirs. She turned, her glowing eyes steady. It is not about perfection. It is about choice. Even in chaos, one act of kindness can mean more than 1,000 acts of greed. Marcus stared at her, speechless. The words cut deep, because they reminded him of himself. The bet. The laughter of his friends. The way he had turned marriage into a joke. For the first time, shame burned inside him. That night, the test came to his own home. It began with the staff. The chef ran screaming through the halls, shouting about poison in the food. The guards drew weapons on each other, each convinced the other had betrayed them. Marcus watched in horror as men he paid millions to protect him nearly killed one another over invisible threats. Stop! Marcus roared, stepping between them. There's nothing there. But they didn't listen. Their eyes were glassy, lost in illusions only they could see. Alara walked calmly into the chaos. She raised her hand, and for a moment her eyes blazed like twin stars. The illusions broke. The guards collapsed, shaking, whispering apologies. Marcus turned to her, breathing hard. How did you? She cut him off. The test is inside them. I can guide, but I cannot save. Only they can choose. Marcus swallowed hard. His chest was tight. For once, he felt powerless in his own house. Days passed, and the tests grew worse. Entire nations cracked under the pressure. Some leaders ordered nuclear strikes against the ships, but the weapons never detonated. Others begged for peace, but the aliens did not respond. The world was unraveling. Marcus found himself wandering his halls, restless. For the first time, he did not drink, did not call his friends, did not throw parties. Instead, he followed Alara. He saw her comfort the staff when fear returned. He saw her whisper words that calmed children in the gardens. He saw her sit alone at night, looking up at the ships with an expression he couldn't name. Sadness, maybe, or longing. And slowly, something changed in him. He began helping. At first, small things. Bringing food to his workers instead of ordering them to fetch it. Standing guard when panic returned, though his hands shook. When riots broke out outside the gates, he went with Alara to calm the crowd instead of hiding behind his wealth. It was clumsy, awkward, even dangerous. But it was real. One evening, Marcus finally asked the question that had haunted him since the beginning. Why me? Out of billions of people, why did you choose me? Alara studied him, her glowing eyes soft now. Because you were empty. You had everything, yet nothing. And emptiness can be filled. Others are too full of greed, full of pride, full of lies. But you, Marcus Kane, you still had room to change. Her words struck him like a blade. For years he had thought himself invincible, untouchable. But she had seen through him from the first moment. And instead of hating him for the bet, she had chosen him. The following night, the world shook. The ships pulsed with light, sending waves across the sky. Governments declared states of emergency. Economies collapsed overnight. Billions prayed, screamed, or rioted. Alara stood on the balcony, her face calm as the world fell apart. Marcus stood beside her, his hands trembling. "Is this it?" he asked. "Is this how it ends?" Alara shook her head slowly. "No, the final judgment has not yet come." "But it is close." Marcus sat in his dark office, staring at the city lights outside his tall glass windows. The streets below buzzed with life, but inside the room, silence pressed on him like a weight. His empire, his companies, his billions, his endless games of power suddenly felt small. Too small. He could not stop thinking about Alara. She had changed in front of him. She was no longer the quiet, ordinary woman he believed he had chosen as part of his cruel bet. No, she was something else. Something vast. Something ancient. He remembered her eyes, glowing brighter than fire when she had spoken about judgment. He remembered her words echoing in his head, words not of this world. And yet when he looked at her at home, she acted normal. She cooked meals. She read books. She smiled at him kindly, as if nothing strange had ever happened. Marcus poured himself a glass of whiskey and muttered, "I'm losing my mind." But then the glass trembled in his hand. A low hum filled the air, deep and unearthly, as if the walls themselves were vibrating. "Marcus!" He turned sharply. Alara stood in the doorway. Her face was calm, but her presence filled the room with power. She did not walk. She glided forward, her feet barely making a sound. Marcus tried to hide his fear with anger. "What are you?" he demanded. Alara tilted her head. "You still see me as a woman you married for a bet. But Marcus, I am far older than your world. I came here because your cruelty called me." His heart pounded. "Called you?" "You chose me because you thought I was weak," she said softly. "But weakness is not what you see. You saw a mask, a test. You made your vow before others not out of love but out of arrogance. And now, you must see what that arrogance has awoken." Before Marcus could speak, the room around them dissolved. The city vanished. The office walls melted into darkness. Suddenly, Marcus stood in a vast void filled with stars. Planets floated in the distance. Nebulas swirled in colors brighter than any jewel he had ever bought. He was standing in space but breathing, alive. "Alara?" he whispered. Beside him, she was no longer in her human dress. She stood tall, cloaked in light, her figure both beautiful and terrifying. Her eyes blazed like suns, and her voice thundered through the cosmos. "Your kind has forgotten humility. You live as if power has no cost. You play games with lives? You turn sacred bonds into mockery. I am here because the balance is breaking." Marcus felt like a child before her, his arrogance shattered. His voice shook. "Why me? Why not someone else?" Her eyes softened just slightly. "Because you are a symbol, the richest of your people, yet the emptiest inside. If you can change, there is hope. If you cannot, then your world must prepare for judgment." Marcus fell to his knees on the endless starlit floor. For the first time in years, tears stung his eyes. He wanted to speak, to beg, to promise. but no words came. Ilara reached out her hand, glowing like fire. This is your choice, Marcus. Redemption or ruin. And then he was back. The office returned. The city lights sparkled again outside the window. The whiskey glass sat on the desk untouched, but Marcus could still feel the cold of the stars on his skin. Ilara stood by the window now, looking down at the city. She looked human again, her dress flowing softly. But Marcus knew better. He whispered, "If I choose wrong, you'll destroy us?" She did not look at him. "Not destroy, Judge. The galaxy does not forget arrogance." Marcus gripped the desk, trying to steady himself. He had built companies, crushed rivals, manipulated governments, but none of that mattered here. He was powerless, and yet, in the pit of his stomach, he felt something strange. Not fear, not anger. Something he had not felt in years. Hope. Because if Ilara believed he could change, maybe he still had a chance. But what would change look like? Could a man like him undo a lifetime of cruelty? Could he face the eyes of the galaxy and prove himself worthy? The city outside seemed smaller now. The stars seemed closer, and in that moment, Marcus realized this was only the beginning. Marcus woke the next morning with a pounding head and a restless heart. Sleep had not come easily. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ilara's blazing form in the stars. Every time he tried to forget, her voice echoed inside him. Redemption or ruin. For the first time in his life, Marcus had no plan. He was used to money solving everything, lawsuits, scandals, betrayals. But this? He couldn't bribe the universe. He couldn't silence the judgment that hovered above him. When he walked into the dining room, Ilara was already there. She was sipping tea, looking calm as though nothing had happened. "You didn't sleep," she said, without turning her head. Marcus sat down slowly. "What do you want from me?" Her gaze lifted to meet his. "Not what I want. What the galaxy demands." His jaw tightened. "You keep talking about judgment. But you married me. You chose this. Why me?" Ilara set the cup down gently. "Because every empire begins with one man, and every empire falls with one man. Your choices ripple outward, Marcus. You built towers, but you also crushed lives beneath them. The universe listens. The universe remembers." He slammed his fist on the table. "I'm just a man. I can't answer for the whole world." Her expression was calm, but her eyes glowed faintly. "You will not answer for the whole world, but you will be tested. Your choices will decide how the galaxy sees humanity." Marcus felt a chill crawl down his spine. "What kind of test?" Ilara rose from the chair. "One you cannot buy." The room flickered. In an instant, Marcus was no longer in his mansion. He was standing in the middle of a ruined city. The sky above was a dull gray, the air heavy with smoke. Towers lay in rubble, fires burned in the distance, and cries of pain echoed everywhere. Marcus spun in horror. "What is this?" Ilara stood beside him, though now her form shimmered, half human, half celestial light. "This is your trial. You will walk this city and choose. You will act not as a billionaire, but as a man. If you pass, you begin redemption. If you fail, the galaxy will see you as it always has, empty, cruel, arrogant." Before Marcus could protest, she vanished into the smoke. He stood alone. The sound of crumbling stone shook the ground beneath him. Then, a cry. Marcus turned. A small girl was trapped under a broken beam, her face streaked with soot. She reached out weakly. "Help!" His instincts warred inside him. For years he had stepped over the weak. He had told himself their suffering was not his problem. But now, as he looked into the girl's eyes, something cracked inside him. Marcus dropped to his knees and pushed at the beam. It was heavy, far heavier than he expected. His muscles strained, sweat poured down his face, but he kept pushing. With a roar, the beam shifted enough for the girl to crawl free. She hugged him, sobbing. "Thank you, sir." Marcus stared at her, stunned. No one had ever hugged him with gratitude before. Not like this. But then, another sound. Screams. He turned and saw a group of people being cornered by shadowy figures. These shapes were not human. They were twisted, alien, with long arms and glowing red eyes. They looked like predators made of smoke. The people screamed for help. Marcus froze. His heart pounded. He had no weapon, no guards, no power. Just himself. He thought of running. He thought of hiding. But then he remembered Ilara's words. Your choices ripple outward. Without thinking, Marcus grabbed a broken metal rod from the ground. His hands shook, but he charged forward anyway. The shadows turned toward him, hissing. He swung the rod wildly, not with skill but with desperation. The first strike connected, and to his shock the creature dissolved into smoke. The others hissed and lunged, but Marcus kept swinging, yelling, refusing to step back. Finally, the shadows melted away. The people stared at him in disbelief. One man whispered, "He saved us." Marcus dropped the rod, panting, his chest burning. For the first time in his life, he felt alive. Not from money, not from power, but from choosing to stand when he could have walked away. The world around him flickered, and he was back. He stood once again in his mansion dining room. The teacup still sat on the table. Ilara stood across from him, her face unreadable. Marcus's voice shook. That city, those people, was it real? Ilara studied him. Real enough. The galaxy has many such cities, worlds broken by pride and greed. You tasted what your choices mean. Marcus gripped the chair to steady himself. His hands still shook. I tried. I helped them. Isn't that enough? Ilara's eyes glowed faintly. It is a beginning, but one act does not erase a lifetime of arrogance. You will be tested again, and each test will cut deeper. Marcus swallowed hard. For the first time, he didn't argue. He simply nodded, because deep inside, he knew she was right. Marcus stood on the balcony of his mansion, staring at the night sky. The city below glowed with its usual life. Cars, lights, towers of glass. But to him, it all looked fragile now, small. He had faced things no human had ever seen. A ruined city, shadows that fed on fear, a test that pushed him beyond himself, and Ilara, who was no ordinary woman but something vast, something tied to the galaxy itself. Behind him, he felt her presence before she spoke. It is time. Marcus turned. Ilara stood in her wedding dress, but her form shimmered faintly, light breaking through the fabric as though she were made of stars. Time for what? He asked, though he already knew. The final judgment, she said. Her eyes glowed, brighter than before. You must stand before the Council of Stars. They will see your heart and decide whether your people are worthy. Marcus's throat tightened. And if they decide we are not, then humanity will face what other arrogant species have faced, correction. Entire empires have been erased for less. The ground shifted. The world dissolved. Marcus blinked and found himself standing in a vast chamber, larger than any stadium he had ever seen. The ceiling stretched into infinity, filled with swirling galaxies. Thrones of light circled the space, each one holding a figure of unimaginable power. Some looked humanoid, others like living constellations. Their eyes burned like suns. Ilara stood beside him, no longer hiding her true form. She blazed with golden fire, a being of pure energy, her human mask now just a memory. One voice boomed deep and thunderous. Ilara, why bring this human before us? Ilara's voice echoed, calm yet fierce, because he represents his kind. He chose arrogance, cruelty, and shallow pride, but he was given a chance to change. His path now rests before the council. Another voice, sharp as glass, cut in. We have watched this species. They burn their world, enslave their weak, chase greed above all. Why should they not be erased? Marcus's knees shook. His voice cracked. Because we can change. The chamber fell silent. Dozens of cosmic eyes turned on him. Marcus swallowed hard, then stepped forward. I won't lie, he said. I was the worst of us. I had everything, money, power, respect, and I used it to crush others. I married Ilara as a cruel bet because I thought people were toys. The council watched in silence. He kept going. But when she showed me what I was, when she showed me the truth, I saw myself for the first time. I saw how small I was, and I realized, if I could change, maybe anyone can. One of the beings leaned forward, eyes blazing. Words are dust. Show us truth. Suddenly, the ruined city appeared around him again. The smoke, the rubble, The cries. The girl he had saved looked up at him, her small hand reaching out. The people he had defended from the shadows bowed their heads. The vision faded. Marcus stood trembling. I fought for them. Not because I had to, not because it gave me power, but because it was right. If you erase us, then you erase our chance to grow, to become better. Don't judge humanity only by what we were. Judge us by what we could still be. Silence. Then the chamber rumbled as the voices of the council spoke together. Hope in the smallest seed. Arrogance. Tempered by awakening. Choice remains. Fragile. Finally, the eldest voice, deeper than the stars themselves, spoke. The human has been tested. He shows weakness, but also fire. His people may yet rise or fall. Judgment will not erase them. Judgment will watch them. A wave of energy swept over Marcus, lifting him off his feet, filling his chest with burning light. For a moment, he thought he would die. But then, it was gone. The chamber dissolved. Marcus was back in his mansion, gasping for breath, sweat soaking his clothes. Alara stood across from him, her glow dimmed, her form once more human. It is done, she said softly. Marcus sank into a chair, his body trembling. So, we're spared? For now, Alara said. The council has chosen to watch. To see if you and your kind can live differently. You spoke for humanity, Marcus, and they listened. He covered his face with his hands. The weight of what had happened crushed him, but beneath it was something else. Relief. And a strange new strength. He lowered his hands and looked at her. Then I'll prove it. I'll prove we're more than greed and cruelty. Not just me, all of us. Somehow. Alara studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time, she smiled. Then perhaps, Marcus, humanity's story has only just begun. Outside, the night sky shimmered with countless stars. But Marcus knew. They were no longer just lights in the distance. They were eyes, watching, waiting. And for the first time in his life, he didn't fear them. Marcus woke before dawn, his mind restless. Sleep had become difficult since the judgment. He could still feel the heat of the council's eyes on him, vast and eternal, watching every thought, every breath. The mansion was silent. Alara had not returned to their bedroom after the night of the trial. Sometimes she appeared at the edges of his vision, glowing faintly, and sometimes she was gone for days, as if slipping between worlds. He never asked where. He wasn't sure he wanted to know, but tonight felt different. Heavy. Marcus walked onto the balcony and looked at the sky. The stars seemed sharper than before, brighter as if closer. His chest tightened. He whispered to himself, "They're watching." And then, the stars moved. At first, Marcus thought his eyes were playing tricks. But no, it wasn't illusion. 3 lights streaked across the heavens, faster and brighter than any plane or satellite. They weren't meteors either because they stopped, suspended above the city. The air trembled. The glass of the balcony vibrated under his hand. A low hum spread across the horizon, rattling the world awake. Marcus's phone buzzed with frantic alerts. News channels screamed about unidentified crafts over multiple capitals. Social media exploded with shaky videos of enormous shapes blotting out the sky. They had come. The council wasn't just watching anymore. They were sending visitors. Marcus! He turned sharply. Alara stood behind him, her human mask flickering like a candle. Do not panic. They are not here to burn. Not yet, his voice cracked. Not yet? Then why are they here? To see, Alara said simply. The council judged you worthy of a chance. But now others will judge as well. They will walk among your kind. They will test not only you, but humanity itself. Marcus stared at the glowing ships overhead, their silhouettes blotting out the stars. His stomach churned. And if we fail? Her eyes glowed faintly. Then your world will not survive. By morning, the world was chaos. The ships, 3 vast, living structures that shimmered like molten metal, hovered over New York, Beijing, and London. They did not fire weapons. They did not broadcast threats. They simply waited. Governments scrambled jets, pointed missiles, held emergency meetings. The public panicked, malls emptied, streets clogged with fleeing cars. Doomsday cults declared the end, and in the middle of it all, Marcus's phone rang, a secure line. Government. He hesitated before answering.
Hello?
A voice spoke firmly. Mr. Kane, this is the United Nations Security Council. We've been informed you have unique knowledge of these events. We need you in Geneva immediately. Marcus froze. They knew. Somehow they knew. Ilara's presence. The judgment. His role. His arrogance once would have laughed at such a request. But now he felt only dread. He was being pulled into something he could no longer escape. Hours later, Marcus stood inside the UN headquarters, surrounded by leaders, generals, and intelligence officers. Screens displayed the hovering ships, their surfaces shifting like liquid. The Secretary General's voice shook as he spoke. Mr. Kane, you are here because our intelligence suggests you've had direct contact. Is this true? Marcus glanced at Ilara, who stood silently at the edge of the room, unseen by the others. Her golden eyes urged him to speak. He swallowed hard. Yes, they are not here to conquer, at least not yet. They are here to test us, to see if we deserve to stand among them. The room erupted in arguments. Some shouted it was nonsense, others demanded weapons be readied. One general slammed his fist on the table. So we just wait for them to judge us like insects? Marcus's voice rose, surprising even himself. Yes, because fighting them means nothing. I've seen their power. You fire your missiles, they'll swat them aside like dust. But if we show them our worst, if we show them only fear and violence, they'll end us before we can blink. The room fell silent. The Secretary General leaned forward. Then what do they want from us? Marcus hesitated. His chest tightened. He thought of the girl in the ruined city, the people he had saved with only a broken rod in his hands. They want to see if we can be better, Marcus said slowly. If we can rise above greed, cruelty, arrogance, if we can prove that we're worth keeping alive. That night, the first ship opened. Above New York, a vast section of the shimmering hull parted like a flower, revealing a blinding white light. From it descended 3 figures, taller than humans, their forms sleek and crystalline, with faces that shifted like mirrors. The world watched live as they landed in Times Square. Cameras caught every detail. The aliens did not speak, but they moved with calm precision, scanning the people, watching the crowds. One reached out to a child who had run forward. The alien touched the child's forehead gently. The crowd gasped. Then the alien simply nodded, as if satisfied. And somewhere far away, in Geneva, Marcus felt a shiver crawl up his spine. Ilara whispered beside him, "The visitors have arrived. Humanity's trial has begun. This time, Marcus, you are not the only one being judged. Your whole world is."